There's Joe. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, we'll have Mark in a second, but I was just telling that, Tim, I'd like you guys to have sort of the discussion that we can be voyeurs because you guys are the leaders of the industry. But I will start with you, though, because we had a conversation previously about where owners are trying to save revenue, create revenue. Do you remember what you said to me when I said, where's your focus? Are you trying to take care of sponsors, fans? Do you remember what you said?
Well, we don't have any fans.
You said, I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Here to survive at this point this year because we don't have any fans. And so I think this year has been a case or a situation where, we're just trying to work to get fans back with our local healthcare community, with the healthcare people and trying to prep for that. And then, make the games run as smoothly as possible. And try to survive.
For folks to understand the hit you're taking, Adam Silver had said the teams are losing about 40% of revenue. I know for the Warriors, that doesn't cut it. Where are you right now?
Well, because most of our revenue really does rely on fans. We don't have a very large local television contract like teams like the Lakers, for example. So really over 70% of our revenues are lost in this situation where we have no fans. And we anticipated that being the problem, of course, back last March, and we formed a task force to deal with it internally and how we're going to test fans. And you've heard about the program that I proposed as a result. Haven't been able to activate that yet, but we hope to be able to do that sometime this season and perhaps gain.
I've heard of that, but for someone who's unfamiliar with what you endeavor to do, why don't you tell them about your testing plan, what it costs you, and what you get back from it?
Yeah, it's actually very costly. But the truth is we feel that whatever we spend on it, we will get that much back if we can have fans in the building. So it was worth doing to us. We're trying to save a lot of fan revenue, as you just pointed out. So what we're doing is rapid PCR testing. And we've been talking about doing this for about 6 months. We secured the tests. We were early on in this endeavor. And in about 30 minutes, we can test very accurately anyone coming into our building. In fact, while 10 teams in the league currently do have some level of fans, because of the rules in our area, we do not. We, in fact, still, however, test every single person that comes into that building today, whether it be media, whether it be our own operations people, players, whatever. Anyone that comes into the building, we test, and we're setting ourselves up for what we hope later in the season can become something that we do with fans.
Now, I'm thinking Joe maybe has the worst case scenario. He just built a privately funded $1 billion arena, and year one, he can't have his fans. Tim, you're sitting on the other end of the spectrum. You're waiting for an arena to open and for a team to come. You're involved in lots of projects. Just this morning, we heard the Islanders at UBS. They've sold 60% of suites. The demand is there. What are you doing to make sure that when you're ready to go, that fans flow through the open doors?
Well, first, Joe and Mark look pretty good considering both of them just opened up new arenas, and they're in the middle of all of this. So I feel for them because we have $1 trillion industry that's not $1 trillion. And if you think about it, the one industry that's gotten the least amount of help from the government is the live entertainment industry because they don't want to do handouts to us. So we get that we got to go plow on our own to a large extent and figure out the recovery. But what I say is, look, you hear a lot of negative. And it's good that we have an administration today that is science-based, so they're going to be much more practical and conservative on their projections of where this is going to go. But let's just for a second talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, because it is there. So if you look at these 2 vaccines that are out there today, one of them did a sample of 32,000 people. And even though they said it was 96% effective, the reality is only one person out of that entire 32,000 base got very sick. The rest were things like colds that were put into that group. So these are absolute, brilliant, magnificent moments from science to help us correct this problem. There's more coming. Johnson & Johnson, if they get approved here in the next 2 weeks, has 100 million doses they're going to put into our system pretty quickly, and it's a one-shot treatment, not a 2-shot treatment. So I believe science is going to help us get to the right place. What I think Joe, Mark, myself, and anyone else that owns a facility or operates a facility will tell you is we're not going to go cure COVID-19. We're not. The government has to step in and ultimately create a vaccine program that will ultimately get this to a point where we put it in a box. We're always going to deal with it. It's never going away. We will live with this for the rest of our life and probably the next generation's life. Our job is to regain the confidence of our fans and the consumers to come back into our buildings. So it's doing what Joe's doing. It's doing what Mark is doing at Milwaukee. It's doing Clear and integrating Clear into Ticketmaster, who is thinking about ways to ultimately be able to get people in quickly because we can pre-verify that they actually have already been vaccinated. So, in March and April, Scott, if you remember, everyone was walking around saying, let's gas the building and fog it and spray it and wipe everything down. Guess what? We learned from science it wasn't about wiping things down because the majority of the contamination is airborne. And so we spend all of our time thinking about air circulation and getting 80% more clean air into our buildings. Amazon grab and go, a huge way to ultimately not have that person-to-person interaction at the point of purchase. But at the end of the day, let us put upon the government the responsibility of trying to solve this. We're not going to do it. I think the private-public sector comes together to help them do it. Our job is to then regain that confidence. And I think that's, again, huge respect for guys like Joe and Peter in San Francisco. Privatize that building. Mark and his partners went out and put huge amounts of money into that building and that team. And so sports, live entertainment, critical that we get this $1 trillion industry back in the game and make sure that we get to a point where the hundreds of employees that we all put to work every day can get back to work. But more importantly, I do think we're going to return live to 100% capacity here.
Okay, Mark, do you agree that you'll return live? The question, I think we'll all go. We know that the demand is there. Yes, you will return to 100% capacity. The question I think that everybody in sports and entertainment is wondering is when? Mark, you want to chime in on that?
Sure. Hopefully you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
Great. Look, I think you'll start seeing it this year. I think in the next couple months, I think literally in the next couple of weeks, you're going to have more fans will be coming in. And I think my view is that by April or May, hopefully you've got half the arena. As more people get vaccinated, and as more people believe the risk is pretty low, I think you do get back to normal. What's been clear, I think, for all of us, is when you watch the games on TV, it's still very nice, but like I've gone to the games. I assume Joe's gone to games. When you're seeing your team, and you miss the energy, and the players miss the energy. So I think that'll happen. I think it's definitely by the beginning of next season. So I think by the end of this season, you're going to start seeing quite a bit as more people have gotten tested, and people are not as worried about getting COVID.
Hey, Joe, let me tell you what the fans are telling us in our surveys, the way they see a different experience coming out of the COVID world. Better connectivity, sports betting, digitization. How do you see the fan experience being different, not only in arena, but on the large scale where you can scale it?
Well, I think all of those are certainly possibilities, and Lord knows sports betting should go national with all the money that the governments are going to need to fund all the losses. So I think we have a better chance of getting some of that. But honestly, I think the biggest thing we're going to have maybe for a while, where I disagree a little bit with Mark, just a little bit. I'm hopeful, like Tim and Mark are, but I'm a little more cautious because I'm in California. And as you know, it's a little more, it's more difficult here. And the local health authorities are the people we really have to talk to. So I think we're going to see masks for quite a while, maybe even all through next year. I'm not convinced that we will not need testing next year. Let me make that clear. I think there's a possibility we will need, at least in California, maybe in certain venues, testing, because it all depends, as Tim and Mark were talking about, the vaccine rollout. If it really gets rolled out and people, take it, which I think there's a lot of controversy about still. Then there's the issue, if many of you know about the science and the mutations that are happening. There's some things that were talked about earlier in these conversations this morning. We just don't know yet. And I'm hopeful, I really am. And I know the science pretty well. I am hopeful, but I do think there's going to be some people that are going to be, and particularly in the healthcare sector, that are going to be nervous about it for a while. And I think there's a possibility that we're going to be next year. I'm not saying we won't have full stadiums or fans. It could be, but we certainly may have to still take precautions for that. And that may change the experience, at least for another year. I mean, that's kind of what we're anticipating. I hope that's not the case, but it could.
Tim, you're trying to go to a new fan base in Seattle for the hockey team. What is that give and take with the fan base now about keeping them engaged, making them feel safe? And you were designing an arena. Did you ever have to put the pencil down and say, no, we need to change because of circumstance?
So first on the fan base, my brother and his team there have done an unbelievable job. We had 32,000 people in a matter of a day that put deposits down for season tickets. And now they have 65,000 people on the waiting list. They've gone through that sales process now, and their conversion ratio is well above 90% in the middle of the pandemic. So it proves that there is still, and probably now even, a greater insatiable appetite in order to get into the live experience once we come back. So we're seeing that with sponsorship. We're just about sold out of all the suites, all the premium. It is really amazing to see the reaction we've had in Seattle. Now, part of that could be we picked a good market that didn't have a winter sports franchise. But part of that also, I think, is a good indication that the fans and those that want to get back into the arena are still very, very driven at that particular activation. No disrespect to what all of the industry's done with how we stream and how we ultimately live broadcast games. It's not the same without the fans in the building. Music is definitely not the same without fans in the building. So we believe the demand is going to be there. We still activate with the fans quite a bit. They do an unbelievable job up there at staying in constant communication with them. I think social media and technology is ultimately going to enhance the experience. It will never replace the live experience. What we've done as correction, and it's, again, I feel for everyone that owns a facility, because we have had zero legislation that ultimately gives us tax credits or subsidies for the millions of dollars we're all going to have to spend on things like testing our employees, testing our fans. But all of us are going to do work on our buildings and put real money into equipment and technology. So air circulation systems, we improved at both Climate Pledge Arena and the UBS Arena and the Moody Center down in Austin. So in all three new buildings, we had to go back and with our ME engineering folks, figure out how to put more air into the building and get fresher air in there. We've gone to great lengths now to go grab and go with Amazon. That's a huge part of what we're doing on our food and beverage. We're going to have to do a lot more with our employees to make sure that we're tracking them, not just when they come to work, but in particular when they're at home, because we got to catch them if they're sick before they report into work. So we're thinking about how we do that testing that Joe's talking about. All of that commitment, and on behalf of all the owners in sports and music, we will end up, all of us, spending literally $250 million now on retrofitting our buildings in order to make them cleaner, healthier. And then we got to figure out a way to go certify those so that people see certification and that confidence level that we've done what we need to do, not just to operate our buildings on a day-to-day basis, but the technology we put in there. Going to be very critical for us. It would be great if the government would pay a little bit of attention to us in order to help us get some tax credits for the kind of commitment we're going to have to make to get this industry back on its feet.
Tim, do you think there should be some governmental assistance here?
Well, I must say, this is non-political. I think the people we have now guiding us are guiding us because of science, and I'm more optimistic they'll get us to the right place. But at the end of the day, you're looking at three people, and there's a lot of us in this industry. This is the industry that's been most affected, and this is the industry that's received the least amount of help so far on how we get people back on our feet.
There are few feel-good stories coming out of sports and COVID-19. But Mark, I think you've got one of them in Milwaukee, and it bears on innovation and things that can happen. I don't think everybody knows about the possible brick and mortar and franchise chicken restaurant that perhaps the Milwaukee Bucks will be involved in. Can you tell us how it came about and what the plans are and the real scalability of it?
Well, it's a great story, but I mean, I think, there was, when we opened it up, I think for us, part of what we wanted to try to do was, we had demand for that restaurant on the chicken side. And one of the things that we wanted to do with the company was actually see if we could actually grow it and take it national if we can. And it's actually doing exceptionally well right now, but it's way too early. I think it will be something that hopefully we'll be able to grow. But I think for everything, Joe talked about it and Tim talked about it, everything's just been hard. And I think for all of us, there's a lot of hope in that things will change. I mean, hopefully what really ends up happening, because the cost of doing a lot of things that Tim's talking about and that Joe's talking about is really high, is that hopefully if the vaccine works and they won't go, and you see hospitalization rates go down and you see that things are better, then people will take more risk. And Tim's right. I mean, we're all trying to sort of fix our stadiums. Ours is 2 years old. Joe's just got built, and we thought we had built a state-of-the-art stadium, and now we're going back in to end up, exactly what Tim said, making the airflow better. So, the cost of what we're all going to be doing is going to keep on going up. But hopefully, and the reason we're all doing that is that hopefully fans will come in, and that hopefully more fans will have our chicken and eat our chicken. And then I don't think it'll offset everything else we're doing. But
that would be a lot of buckets. Yeah.
That's a lot of buckets.
Joe, let me ask you about innovation, because the things we're talking about here, ingress, egress, cashless, touchless, those are all things that I had heard about, and obviously you guys had as well, pre-pandemic. But there's an acceleration of it all. Where are you in terms of where are we in terms of where we would have been had COVID not hit, and what might stick that we maybe didn't know about?
Oh, I think all of that's being accelerated. No question about it. I can't tell you specifically, quantitatively, but cashless, touchless, all of that certainly is being accelerated. You're going to see that in more arenas than maybe people expected to. I think the airflow, you're lucky. We're lucky. The people on this call, Tim Leiweke, manages a bunch of a new arena in Seattle, is involved with Marc's, his brand new great arena. Ours is. So we have the airflow, ventilation, and some of the issues may be more advanced than some of these other arenas do. I feel bad for some of the folks that really are going to have to go in probably and adjust some of those things. But I do think, to your question, that's all going to get accelerated. We're going to have to, no question, whatever we were considering maybe is a year advanced or something like that, 2 years advanced.
Yeah, for both of you, how has the discussions gone with your business partners, your sponsors, and I'm sure they're understanding, but they also want ROI for their investment. What are those discussions like?
I think it's just everything has been put on hold. I mean, to be honest, I think our partners, everybody understands it. Everybody knows it's not our fault. What's interesting is, I think for our season tickets, it's sold out. I mean, it's, what we had sold, we've ended up keeping the same amount of season ticket holders. So that's great. So that's the good news. The bad news is we can't let them in. So it's, it's like, great. So what do we do? So what ends up happening is you pretty much defer. They've paid for this year. They can't go. So now you're going to give them a credit for next year. Right. And that's really what's happening. I think everything is just on pause. We try to make up with it with some of our partners on the digital side and trying to do things, but it's not the same thing, and it's not going to be the same thing. You got to get into the stadium. But everybody gets it. So I would say the good news is nobody's mad. Everybody's pretty understanding, and everybody sort of looks at it and says, okay, look, this year is going to be hard. We'll figure it out, and we'll just give credits over the course of this year and next year.